Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about LiPos and why you should use them, what the different types of LiPo are, and a little bit about how to charge them, either one at a time or in parallel. So I've got three different types of LiPo here. They're all 3S. What that means is there's 3 cells in series. Each cell has 3.7 volts nominally. You can charge them to more, but the sort of nominal voltage is where they stay for the longest. And they start at about 12.6 volts for a 3S, discharge to about 11.4 volts, then drop to about 11.1, and you can take them down as far as about 10.3 volts. But that's only if you get stuck somewhere and you don't want to be carrying your car home. Usually set your LiPo cutoff to be the medium level and just use a few extra batteries and they'll last a lot longer. Deep cycling them, taking them down to too low a voltage, will cause them to break down internally. Now the hard case one is just one of these soft cases in a hard case, which can be great for protecting the cells, but is really bad in terms of when they start to break down, these cells sort of get a bit puffy and get a bit soft. And with a soft case LiPo, you can see it. You just hold it next to another one and you can just see immediately that they're a bit bigger and they're starting to unfold. At that point, bring it home, put it on the charger, set the charger to full discharge, and then take them somewhere to be recycled, because they're gone. They are going to explode, and when they explode it's called venting usually, and a LiPo fire is very short and very hot and can cause a lot of problems. So a hard case is great if you're worried about damaging them, but it does mean that you need to be a lot more careful with them. This one here is a high voltage LiPo, so it's a 3S, but it charges to 13.05 volts rather than 12.6, which means that it just stores a bit more energy in the same kind of package. So this one here is a 2200 milliamp standard LiPo. This is a 3600 milliamp standard LiPo, and there's about 20 grams heavier in this, but it's got nearly 70–80% more capacity, so it runs for a lot longer. Plus the extra bit of voltage makes your motor go just that little bit faster, makes your servo just a little bit stronger for a longer time. The nominal voltage on this is 11.4, on this one it's 11.1, and that's really where you want to discharge them to and then stop, even though you can go a bit further. Now, a 2S will only have 2 of these cells, and a lot of them are 1P, which is 1 parallel. So there is 1 of each cell, but there's 3 of them in series. This one, I can actually feel the cells. Instead of being aligned that way, it seems to be made of sideways cells. So I think, even though they've said it's a 3S 1P, to get those S's, they've got some kind of multiple cells in there, just to build up the way that they are. Although maybe one day I'll just pull one apart to see what's inside. So LiPo safety. As I've said before, you should treat these like ticking time bombs. They will set fire if you don't look after them, if you overcharge them, or you generally let them get a bit beat up. Now, as you can see, these ones are quite grubby because they get dirty. You can dunk them underwater. They're absolutely fine to be underwater. That's not going to cause any problems there. What is going to cause problems is when they start to get what we call is puffy. And that's where they're soft to the touch and you can see that the cells are starting to swell up. And the problem there is the internal structure is starting to break down, and that basically then, once they start to break down, they become unstable. When they're unstable, they tend to set themselves on fire. So a good tip when you're charging your LiPos is to use 1 or more LiPo bags. Now when I charge in parallel, I tend to put 2 LiPos in 1 bag, which means that if one of them decides to set on fire, at worst, I'll lose 2 LiPos. If I'm charging in parallel though, I'll have 2 in each bag and just put the parallel charge in the middle. Otherwise, if you've just got a single charger, go for 1 LiPo per bag, and then that way, if it sets on fire, it's not too bad. Now, these bags are not completely fireproof. They just suppress a LiPo fire. They've got a nice Velcro seal on top. You want to make sure that they are sealed and that the cables are running down and that the battery is as low in the bag as you could possibly get it. Then put them on either a concrete floor or a heat-proof surface, so a silicone soldering mat or some kind of soldering surface, or a metal countertop or a metal tray. Something that, if this bag gets very hot because you've got a battery on fire inside of it, won't then set your table on fire. So that's the main thing. And that occurrence is really rare as long as you make sure you look after them. One way to check that they're okay is to measure the internal resistance. When you first get a battery, if you've got a charger that can measure the internal resistance, you plug the balance cable into the battery, measure the internal resistance, and then write it down. What I do is I write down all the serial numbers of my battery, and I've got a piece of paper with all the internal resistances on, and then every month or every 2 months I'll check the batteries against those resistances, and if the resistance is more than about 50% of what they started on, then that's getting discharged and recycled. Let's talk charging and, more importantly, discharging. Now, charging is relatively easy. You just chuck in the connectors, bang in a voltage, or in this case choose 3S, 4S, whatever you need, set an amperage, and then go. And then if it was that easy, then you wouldn't need these clever controllers with varying amperages and everything else. So pay attention to the ratings on the battery. If your battery is 3600 milliamps like this one, then you can charge that at 1C, which is 3.6 amps. So 1C is equivalent to dividing the milliamps by 1000 to get your amperage rating. Charging a battery at 1C is the most stable way to charge a LiPo battery. Batteries like this super high discharge, it does 80C discharge, so this can provide 80 times 220 milliamps, so 160 amps of continuous discharge, or constant or 140C bursts, so 280-ish, 300 amps discharge out of that, which is frightening. It's enough to probably send your crawler to the moon. But because it's got high discharge properties, these batteries can also be charged quite quickly. The maximum safe that it says is do not exceed 2C, but if you want to go to the maximum, you can do 5C. So I can actually charge this battery at 11 amps, which means it charges up in about 10 minutes from storage. This battery does not like to be charged at more than 2C, and so charging it at 1C just maintains a consistent charge. Now, most chargers offer you 3 options. You've got a charge, a fast charge, and then a balance. I prefer to balance charge my batteries all the time. And what that does is a charge and a fast charge will use the main terminals to just fire amperage into your battery to charge it up until that battery reaches a specific voltage. But if your cells have different voltages, say one cell's at 3.7, one's at 4, and another one's at 3.9, it'll just shove in current and raise the voltage of all the cells at the same rate. When you plug in the balance connector and you use balance charging, it individually charges all of the cells to get them up to the correct balanced voltage. And what that means is that, again, the battery lasts longer because you're balancing out, you're not over or undercharging particular cells, and it just maintains the life of them. The other main thing as well is to always discharge your batteries, but not to discharge them fully, discharge them down to what's called storage mode. And storage mode is simply a voltage that is high enough that as the battery naturally discharges, it can last about 6 months before it becomes dangerous. But it's low enough that the battery isn't storing so much charge that it starts to break down. Now these batteries, when you charge them up to full, when they have a full charge in them, they slowly start breaking down. If you take most of that charge out but leave in enough to keep the battery stable, it increases the time that it takes to break down internally. Ultimately, after about 300 or 400 charges, which is quite a lot of charges. I mean, if you're crawling, say, once, maybe twice a week, that's going to last you 2 or 3 years at least. But after all of those charges, you will see the internal resistance climb up. Now, if you're driving along and you find that your car suddenly stops and you think that you've hit the voltage cutoff, a good little tool to buy is one of these voltage checkers. And what you do is you just pop them in and the display comes up. It tells me it's 3 cells. All the cells are 11.4. Number 1 is 3.82. Number 2 is 3.81. So it tells me all the voltages of the cells, and I can check and see if my battery is discharging unevenly, if there's a problem with the crawler, or if it's just run out of juice around about on time. I'll tend to use this because this kind of battery will last me on average about an hour and 15, an hour and 30 minutes. If my car suddenly runs out of juice in half that time, I will test the battery to make sure that it's discharging correctly so that I know that there's not a problem with my ESC that's then going to wreck the next battery and then wreck the next battery. Okay, so you've probably charged your batteries with a charger, you've got your balance lead. This is just a balance lead extension. I recommend getting one of these because the balance leads on batteries aren't very long, and if you plug the balance lead straight into the charger, you can't get that battery nice and deep into the case. So grab some of these extensions. These particular ones are about 40-50p off componentshop.co.uk. You can get them off eBay, most model shops, or you can buy all the adapters and make your own. Parallel charging. Absolutely safe as long as you follow a few simple steps. Now, this parallel charging board is just a cheapy one off eBay. It's capable of 6S, but my charger is only capable of 4S. So I just took a 6S balance connector and a 4S balance connector and just made myself a little lead. When you pull these apart, all they're doing is the PCB is just running a line down all these plugs and then offsetting the pins the way that they need to be for the 246S. These are just XT60 connectors, so I plug it into my charger. I plug the balance lead into the balance board and the other end into my charger. And then I have a set of XT60 to Dean's connectors that just go into here. Now it doesn't matter which one they're in because, as I say, it's just a completely parallel board. So all the positives are lined up, all the negatives are lined up. The charger doesn't know about any of this. The charger just sees it as a bank, just sees it as a single battery. And then the most important part of this is using your balance leads. So you have to balance charge using this method. If you try and charge the normal way, you could end up quite easily setting your batteries on fire. Again, the balance leads don't really matter which port they go in. Now, let's go over the simple guidelines here. Charge the same type of batteries together. Don't mix your batteries in any way. Because different manufacturers have different internal resistances, different batteries have different internal resistances, but you'll find because most manufacturers have consistency within the same model, within the same type, use the same batteries. So I've got 6 of these, I've got 2 of these, so they get charged in parallel, these get charged in parallel. You plug your battery in the standard way. You plug in the XT60 and then you plug in the balance lead, and then you repeat this process for your other battery, and then you use as many LiPo safes as you can. I've got 3 here, so I do 3 lots of 2 batteries, so at worst I lose 2 batteries if I have a problem. And then the key here is working out the current that you need. And basically it is, you multiply the C rating of the battery by however many batteries you've got. Because you're charging them in parallel, if you set this thing to 10 amps, that's 10 amps across all the batteries. Now these are 2200 milliamp batteries. So ideally, if I was charging 2 of these, I would set the charger to 4.4 amps, and that would charge each battery at 2.2 amps each, which is 1C. So for the sake of time, I plug 6 batteries into here, crank this thing up to 10 amps, and then I'm charging all of my batteries at just under 1C, about 0.8C, which is not ideal, but it does mean that I can just put them all in, pack my bags, get everything ready, and then all the batteries charge in the same time it would take to charge one battery at the same C rating. So if I was charging this battery at 1C, I can charge, using this charger, 4 batteries in the same amount of time. And in fact I can charge those 4 batteries a little bit faster because I can crank it up to 10 amps, even though I could charge one of these in 10 minutes. What this allows you to do is charge large batches of batteries. If you're going out on a multi-hour trip, or you're having a few day trip, 2 days, and you don't have access to a charger, maybe you're camping overnight, you can charge up all your batteries quite quickly. It shortens the amount of time that you're charging the batteries. It also means that you can be around your batteries just in case there's any problems. Right, well, I've probably scared a few people by talking about LiPo fires, but the important thing is, if you do start to see smoke coming out of one of these bags, don't open the bag. Turn the charger off, disconnect the cables if you can, or unplug the main cable, and then get some oven gloves, try and scoop it all up, and then take it outside and throw it on some concrete. It will create a lot of smoke, it will create a lot of heat, but opening the bag will cause you far more damage than just letting it do its thing. And that's about all I can say there. Right, well, if this video has been of any use to you, please hit the thumbs up. Drop any questions in the comments, and please subscribe for more videos like this, more crawling tips, more how-tos, and more builds of the Climb Like a Spider. Thank you very much.